We're gradually learning more and more about what happened, not only on January 6th, but in the immediate run up to it. Here is a fun little tidbit. A day before the actual riot, the Chief of Staff for Mike Pence, former Vice President, apparently had a warning for the head of Mike Pence's Secret Service. They already predicted at that point that Donald Trump might turn on him and that might be a big deal. The Chief of Staff at that point was Marc Shure, had a message for the agent, Tim Geibels, who said to him the president was going to turn publicly against the vice president and that could present a security risk to Mike Pence. Shure didn't know what form the security risk might take. I don't think anybody predicted exactly what would happen that next day. But after days of intensifying pressure from Trump on Pence to take the extraordinary step of intervening in the certification of the Electoral College count to forestall Trump's defeat, Shure seemed to have good reason for concern. And of course, if you've been watching this for us for a while or paying attention to American politics, you know what ended up happening. That warning turned out to be a good thing to have done because the situation turned incredibly chaotic, and we want to show you a little bit of how things went down. So yeah, they thought that Trump might turn on him. He did, that it might present a security risk. It was, they had to get the vice president out of there. And I know that we already knew that had happened. I don't know how much scarier the warning is, but the entire thing is just so, it's incomprehensible that we got to this point.
Yeah, but it's even more incomprehensible that we haven't gotten out of that point yet. So let's just break this down real quick. Look, guys, we know that they were trying to murder Mike Pence. How do we know? Well, you just heard it with your own ears. They were chanting, "Hang Mike Pence," as in murder the vice president of the United States, as they broke into the Capitol trying to find him. And by the way, we also know that they were within 1 to 2 minutes of catching up with him. They had gone in the same direction that he was in, and Secret Service barely got him out of there. Maybe, by the way, Secret Service barely got him out of there because they got the warning from his own office a day ago. Hey, be careful, our own president might try to get his vice president murdered in America. And Donald Trump, if the election were held today, would win the presidency. What is going on, America? What's wrong with you? I mean, this is plain as day. Even his own vice president, the day before, his chief of staff tells the Secret Service, remember, the president's a maniac and might try to physically harm his own vice president. And everybody takes it as, oh, that's totally normal. It's not totally normal. That's insane. Could you imagine if Biden's office, chief of staff, talked to the Secret Service back in 2016 and said, oh, by the way, we're leaving office. Now remember, Barack Obama might try to murder me. So can you please protect me against Barack Obama? That would have been the biggest story in American history, in literally of my lifetime, political story of my lifetime. Trump does it, everyone's like, oh yeah, everybody knows Trump's a murderer and encourages his own vice president to be killed. That's normal. It's not normal. The guy's a goddamn lunatic. So I'm asking the Republicans, which is, I know it's absolutely impossible, for God's sake, snap out of it, or is this who you are? Do you like that Trump did that and that they almost killed Pence? Do you like that? Because by supporting Trump, you're saying, yeah, I kind of love that.
I think some like that.
Well, yeah, they must like it. I mean, they nominated him and then they nominated him after they knew as much as they did about him. Even not this, you didn't have to know this to know that the guy was absolutely nuts. You knew it in 2015 too. But this goes to exactly what the problem in the Republican Party is this addiction to power, and the only person they see as being able to hold or wield power is that lunatic. And going to the nuts and bolts of this, and we used to talk about how spineless and soulless Mike Pence was, and how he should have stood up to Donald Trump, and he was weak and he was afraid. He might be the bravest vice president ever for knowing what was about to happen, what could happen, and still walking over to the Capitol to preside over that. And I'm being a little tongue-in-cheek on that, but if you think about it in those terms, it's not really terribly tongue-in-cheek.
No, but it's not though, because so look, I can't stand Mike Pence politically, and I don't think it's that big a deal. It's the lowest bar ever to go and do a ceremonial role. It's as I've said this analogy before. Trump was basically asking the guy who's throwing out the opening pitch in a baseball game to win the game.
Yeah.
But he's not in the game. It's a ceremonial opening pitch, right? And he's like, I don't care. Just pretend that that was the game and steal the game for me, right? And Pence was like, no, I'm not gonna destroy American democracy. But you have to give credit where credit is due. He knew that he might be in very serious physical danger because he knows his own president was a lunatic. Now I'll take credit away from Mike Pence. So he's tweaked Trump since then, just once or twice. Why don't you come out and say, hey, I knew ahead of time this lunatic was gonna try to get me killed. Can you please stop supporting this lunatic who nearly had me murdered? Is that too much to ask for? And in the Republican Party, by the way, the answer is a resounding yes. That is too much to ask for because the Republican voters will not turn on Trump. They will turn on Pence. And they will say, how dare you? You should have just been a good boy, a good soldier, and just taken your murder that we were planning for you.
Right, when he drops out after Iowa in 2024, then we'll hear something, I would imagine, from Mike Pence.
Wow.
Well, because until then, he knows that he could come out and do a press conference and play audio of him talking with Trump, and Trump could threaten to have him killed on the audio, and the base would side with Trump. They just would. Yeah. It's like I don't feel as sorry for Pence because of as you guys have pointed out, he's absolutely horrible and he has been for decades. But it's the similar sort of position of like if you were an actress that Harvey Weinstein abused, years before Me Too. Sure, you can come forward and try to convince people, but lots of powerful people are going to side with the abuser. It's not that they don't know what's going on; it's that they don't care what's going on, and they'd really prefer that you not bring it up. And so it's horrible for Pence that that's the state of his party, and it's a little bit again soulless of him that he seems to be okay enough with that to go along with it if that's what it takes for him to potentially hold some sort of elected office in the future. That he isn't speaking out about it, even though it would torch his career.
And then we test what matters, right? Sometimes we're in the era now where we think nothing matters, and nothing has proven itself to matter. The January 6th commission is going to be out with public hearings next week. Will anything that they will do that convinces all of us, and we don't need too much convincing, will it convince anybody else, or does nothing matter? We're going to hear horrific things about what was perpetrated against our government, what was attempted to be perpetrated against our government. And we're in the era of nothing matters. And I think Donald Trump is the personification of that.
Yeah, so look, to that point, I'll say the last thing here. It's, of course nothing matters. If Pence turned on Trump, it wouldn't matter to a single Trump voter. And like I said, they would be probably more animated to kill him. And so we all know that. But I'm asking you Republican voters, because you're the core of the problem. Trump wouldn't be around unless you love that type of call to violence, attack against democracy. You guys live for it. So I'm asking you guys, what's wrong with you? Because I think Bernie Sanders is a terrific human being. He's a wonderful politician. He's tried his best. If he threatened to murder AOC, I wouldn't still be on his side. I would think that's the craziest thing I have ever heard.
What's the context?
All of his good work for 40 years, that's funny. All of his good work for 40 years flushed down the toilet because he turned into a lunatic at the end, right? But you guys don't see it that way. You think, man, oh boy, that's a strong man. Doesn't care about the laws, doesn't care about the life of his vice president. Go get him, Donald Trump. You know you think that, because not a single one of you is gonna turn based on this evidence.
Yeah, I'm tempted to play like the Louis Gohmert, like how dare you, Cenk, say that we don't have a heart, that we don't care, they wanna kill Mike Pence. Well, you don't. You don't care. How many Republicans, like we've been through, I don't know how many like evolutions of this story where we find out a little bit more about how crazy it is. I'll remind you that it wasn't that many weeks, maybe a month ago, that we had an insider account of Trump in real time reacting on the 6th to the threats against Pence, and he seemed to be delighting with it. And we know that he responded to some of the people telling him to call off the mob by saying, you don't understand how angry they are. Like he seemed to be on the side of the murderous crowd. But again, none of these developments have led to tons of Republicans coming out and saying that this is obviously beyond some line, some final line for the party, because every one of them is making an ever-evolving calculus of what do they need to say to stay in a position where the base will accept them, because there's always somebody who is willing to be crazier than them who would gladly primary them.
In fact, today, Representative Chris Jacobs dropped out of his race because he said he was in favor of mild gun control after the Buffalo shootings. He's a representative from New York. Every single Republican official unendorsed him, abandoned him, and said, how dare you raise the age that somebody can get an assault weapon from 18 to 21? Outrageous. I'm not joking or exaggerating 1%. And he said, I give up. There's no hope in this Republican Party. I did the mildest gun control possible. I said, yeah, maybe we should do that. And I lost every endorsement. There's no way I can win now. The core of the problem, and mainstream media will never tell you this, the core of the problem is the Republican voters themselves.
Yeah.
And so that is dispiriting, but that is the state of the country. And then people then ask me, and then on Twitter they say I hit Republicans too hard. Poor Republicans. Okay, well look, what do you want me to do? And if you're like people I know in my personal life, if you're still a Trump supporter, you're kind of telling me you're a monster. Like you didn't mind him doing 1,000 insane things, and by the way, saying that my family should have been kept out of the country. And you don't mind that at all. There's something weird and terrible and hateful about you. And then on top of that, now you all know that he wanted to have his own vice president killed, and you still don't care. You still support him. No, then don't tell me you're not a monster.
You're a heretic too.
Yeah, because you are a monster.
Yeah, and meanwhile, you point out all those things that should be lines that nobody would cross in support of a politician. Meanwhile, following Biden's gun speech, a commentator on Fox News said that speech was itself an impeachable offense. Like there's no. We're in fantasy land. We're in bizarro world.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.